in the DMV, Maryland?
Today was nice and sunny, but cold in the 40s.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
It's actually not bad here. I'm glad the weather is still holding, but things have slowed down going into holiday. Hey, what's up, everybody? See you joining in. Thank you for joining. This will be an interesting conversation, and I'm excited to get into it. Just something that most people don't know. Rob and I have an interesting friendship origin story because what people don't know is I do ride a Harley Davidson V-Rod anniversary edition, and I had this space in my house that was a bed first floor. I used to park my Harley in the house, and one day I posted a picture of me and I saw the motorcycle parked in the house, and he, into it like, who does that? Like, who puts the motorcycle out?
Yeah, this dude don't have no family, no responsibilities or nothing. He just bring the bike in through the kitchen, put it in the living room. I was like, that's my type of dude. If I was irresponsible, I need to get to know this brother. So can we go for a ride, please?
So Rob rides a Harley as well. He still rides. I sold my bike a few years ago. Although, I don't drive now. Like, I don't even car anymore. I don't like driving. But I might pick up a Harley again. I would enjoy riding my motorcycle. So maybe I'll get another Harley at some point. But man, it's good to have you on. For everyone watching, we are going to start with what Rob does for a living and how that intersects with who he is also as an ordained minister. So Rob, why don't we just get into it and tell us what it is that you do.
So professionally, I am a cybersecurity consultant. Specifically, I do work for the Department of Defense and other government agencies.
Yeah. So cybersecurity, someone who cybersecurity companies, cloud infrastructure, and things like that. Cybersecurity is getting more and more complicated, and there are all kinds of hacks all the time, from social media accounts all the way to bank accounts, and of course businesses being hacked. But what should people know about protecting their data? Like, what kind of things should we be aware of?
Yeah, that's a good question. Typically, you hear about cybersecurity, on television, on the news, when there's a breach or a hack, something major. So I will tell you that, and please know that both China and Russia has what we call in the industry captured the flag, in terms of they own us. They own the U.S. government. They own the Department of Defense. They have access to all of our technology, our weapon systems, how our various government agencies run and operate. They use and manipulate that data so that they can influence elections, they can influence technology, they can influence the economy.
So as an individual, just a person out here, where we're using social media platforms, we bank online, pretty much our lives through our phones. How can we protect ourselves from hacks? Like, what do we need to be aware of?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. It's, in your email, I'm sure if you work in most corporations, they have some type of policy for phishing attacks. You may get an email from someone but it has a strange email address. Click in the corner of that email address, and like, for instance, I may have an email that on the front that says Ramal Toon, but then it has an address from the UK or another foreign country. So right off the bat, I can tell that's not a trusted person. So don't click on any links. Once you click on a link, it basically goes into your computer. It profiles you, which is what hackers like to do. They like to know where you bank. They like to take their time and find out as much information about the individual. They check your emails, who you're sending emails to, where do you bank, where do you live, who your children are. And then oftentimes they'll go into your social media accounts and really profile you, get a good understanding of what type of resources you have, and pretty much they own you. So a couple of real fast things I would encourage you to either get what we call a password management tool. You can, a lot of them are free. If you have a Apple, anytime you go to a website or anytime you log on to, say, your banking account, it will give you an encrypted password, which is very long and you're not going to remember it. And you always have to log on through that particular device. Also, I would say review your bank statements. If you don't do it monthly, but review your bank statements and look for these small fees. Sometimes hackers will go in and grab, you can have $10,000 in the bank and they could care less. What they want to do is take that dollar, that $2.50 over a long period of time. And they may have hacked into 500 or 1,000 users at the same bank. So they realize that they can add $2.50 and add a title fee, and most people are going to blow past that. So, and the third thing is stop telling people when you out of town. Y'all stop taking pictures. Y'all in the Bahamas, you're in the Dominican Republic. I'm going to be gone for 3 weeks and I'm profiling. I'm checking you out. I got your bank account. I can have a ball. I could take your car. I know what airports you parked at. So it's different things like that. You know, the United States is the leading country in technology and the use of internet. So we do, and we've become accustomed to doing all of our business on the internet. Places like China and Russia, you have to apply through the government to get internet services, and everything is monitored.
Yeah, it's funny. I've gotten into the habit of now when I'm traveling, I mention it right when I'm home. So you might be still on the road, but right?
Yeah.
I heard that from someone else in cybersecurity as well. It's like, stop telling the world you're not at home, right? Because you know, they're watching, and other people that had intentions are paying attention to your activity online. And so once you're posting in real time,
absolutely,
you're giving people the opportunity to do something that could be harmful to your finances. And that point you made about banking, like I've heard about, hackers. Not, you can have hundreds of thousands of dollars in the bank. They don't care to take small bites of $2.50 every month, but
they got you for life.
They're doing that with thousands of people, and since it's a small amount, you don't know that you've been hacked, and that they're taking a couple of dollars. You're not alarmed by what you see. So it's important to go through those bank statements and identify, even if it's a small thing that doesn't look like much money. Make sure something we're intentional about purchasing on a recurring basis, because hacks can be subtle. We hear about the big ones, but they're most of the time they're subtle, so that they can keep engaging you through your banking and wherever you're using your debit and credit card.
Absolutely.
That's good.
And one other thing that kind of came to my mind, and I really understand this because of the work that I do, and most people that have other vocations and other jobs, they don't understand that in foreign countries, people are paid just like we go to work and do our jobs. China and Russia in particular, people go to work 10, 12 hours a day, and their job is to target Americans and to influence everything that we do. That's why on something as simple as TikTok, which is developed by a Chinese company, but I'm not a big fan of TikTok, and I can't tell people what to do from a social perspective, but you've heard on the news that TikTok is not allowed to be operated on government computers. So if you're a federal government employee or DoD employee, because of the capabilities of TikTok, you cannot use TikTok. So I'm nervous. I get, social media laughs and jokes from friends all the time on TikTok. And Rob doesn't do TikTok. I can get a T-shirt that says that, because I don't trust what it does. I know exactly what it does.
Now, Rob, you have very interesting background, and the way you understand cybersecurity. You are the founder and owner of a cybersecurity company that works with the government.
Mm-hmm.
You're a veteran. We both Army vets.
Cool.
You see different work.
Yeah.
We saw around the same time because you were still in during the Kuwait War too, right?
Correct.
Yep.
Correct. And
But
I've been back several times as an advisor to the U.S. Army as well.
I was a medic. What was your MOS?
21 Lima, which is communications.
Yeah. Is that what opened the door for you to go from communication into cybersecurity independently as owning your own company?
Yeah, it's interesting. Cybersecurity is a $1 million word. When I was active duty military, we called it information security. Cybersecurity is a word that was really invented by a company, Booz Allen and Hampton. And it's a sexy word and it draws people to the environment. But when I was active duty, we were the guys with the satellite phones, secure communications, making sure that the aircraft was able to hit their target. That type of information, the military has owned that technology for years. And it was kind of interesting to me as cyber started to bloom, and I could look around. I was like, man, we did that in the military. So the military secrets have actually gone private. It's just the way that on the battlefield that the military exchanges logistical information and things like that.
Yeah. Now, from that, you are also an ordained minister. So how, from military, you're now in cybersecurity, information intelligence, and you're clergy. How do those two work? How did that happen first?
The calling, man. You and I are bonded by our past, our relationship, our experiences, our relationship with our fathers. As you know, I didn't grow up with my father around, and so the military gave me strength. It helped me solidify my identity, along with my faith. And I didn't realize that until I got older, that I really was someone. I wasn't the person of the stories that were told about me as a young person. So the military gave me discipline. Again, it gave me my identity. It gave me confidence. You dodge a couple of bullets and jump out of an airplane, you're a bad boy, So I needed that. And that's what I got. And so when I came back to the DC area, I joined a local church. And I started meeting all of these young men, teenagers with single mothers. And there's probably a couple of them on the phone now. But I just had this energy with them. Some of the young brothers at the church, they had their mother and their father, but when they had challenges, they would kind of come to me because I just had this type of insight when a young man is troubled. And so I maintain that bond with young people to help them first see Christ, but also see and understand their purpose in life.
Yeah.
And how do you not pay attention to a calling? In particular, this is something that's been going on for about 20 and 25 years. So some of those young men that I may have met as 9 and 10-year-olds, they're in their 30s and 35 and 40, and they have families. And so I've seen the manifestation of Christ in their life. You know the story. It's I shake my head every day. Anybody that knows me and the relationships that I have with people, every day I'm just blown away because I was kind of brought up to believe that I wasn't worthy or I wasn't capable of having deep and close and intimate relationships.
That's interesting because you are able to live in both worlds, being an ordained minister, with heart for young people, and the reason I find that compelling is because the people I know feel like these two things are in opposition to each other. Either you are a minister and that's all you are, or you're in corporate America and that's all you are. Like you don't get to be both. But what I appreciate is people who are able to see that I can actually live a fully integrated life. right?
Absolutely.
Being called to the serve the Lord in ministry doesn't have to throw away every other gift that God gave me,
Yeah.
even using the corporate space as well. That
Yeah.
you can do both. You can serve God and serve others in ministry, and you can do well as a business owner. The two are
Yeah.
not issue. Is that it?
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that. As you were saying, I was just thinking back of some of the challenges that I had. You know, anytime you're called by God, I don't care if it's just to be an usher. Most people, it's such a humbling experience, and that's all that you want to do. And there was a season where I was really waiting for the church to put me in position so that I could act out my calling. But then you got to eat too. And so my undergrad in electrical engineering, so I've always been exposed and appreciative and understanding of technology. And also too, some of my challenges and being free in Christ made me free. So I have a hard time in corporate America. I'm not good at playing the good old boy networks and things like that. And I really studied my craft so that I could be a subject matter expert. And so, in church, sometimes they like to label you, you're a youth minister and that's all you do. Well, God forbid you speak to a senior citizen and you develop a relationship with that. Now you're out of your swim lane. And it was kind of the same in technology. I worked for, several large major corporations as a consultant, and I learned enough from them and that type of work to start and create my own engagements. And that way I can stand up and I can take responsibility for my own actions and for my work.
Yeah, I like hearing that, Rob, because I'm knowing you and hearing you say the military gave you discipline, it gave you confidence and things.
Yeah,
I think that's the story for a lot of us who serve. Uh,
yeah,
we're looking for something, and something that we did not get in our communities. And for many of us, it was our last shot,
yeah,
right? Like,
no doubt.
this has to be the thing. And
Yeah,
uh, for years, definitely gave me a lot of discipline. In
yeah,
fact, at the time, I didn't even realize how disciplined I had become.
absolutely.
Still, I was young. I had a very bad attitude. And but at the time, there are regiments that you
Yeah,
just live into consistently every single day that are not one. But
yeah,
and the military knows how, has special ways to get you to do what they want you to do. And
absolutely. Yeah,
that position, and I found that when I, got out the Army and went to college, it almost seemed unfair how easy college was because I had the discipline,
absolutely.
sharpened over 4 years serving in the Army.
Yeah,
And it makes a lot of things much easier when you know how to build a regimen, when you know how to discipline yourself, when you know how to push through hard things because you don't have the option of not pushing through. And
yeah,
to hear you talk about those skills translate into your profession, both as a minister and as a business owner, to say, hey, I want it to be the best in my craft, right? That
absolutely.
discipline that started younger, right? That
Yeah,
really sharpening those skills, really knowing what you know,
yeah,
prove it. And I think, one of the things I've always appreciated about our friendship is seeing how you navigate both worlds, how you can talk about the work that you do for the government through cybersecurity and your clients, and then talk about your love for families and communities, and particularly children and growing up in single parent households, because you and I both grew up in single parent households. And
yeah.
I find that, do you find that your upbringing is the reason why you have a heart for young people in single parent environments?
Yeah, no doubt, man. You and I've had a number of conversations about our mothers. And, my mother we were in Oklahoma, and my mother somehow found a job in Washington, D.C. in 1969 from Oklahoma. There was no ways, and her faith was amazing, but I didn't really appreciate that until my early 20s. And, single mothers, and I see, the young brothers and the children of the single women. We kind of have this, like people knew. I know when I was a kid, I played sports and I would get dropped off because my mother was working. And I felt like everyone knew that I was the kid without a father, and so when I saw kids like that, I wanted to take that element of feeling a loner away and just say, hey, I got you. I understand. Hey, it's okay. And really, focus on the good, whether they were a good athlete or whether they were a smart kid, whether they were polite. It's really amazing when you can tell a kid has insecurities and you encourage them, whether they, I've seen kids at the grocery store and who will stand back and open the door for people to come in. And I always compliment that person.
Yeah, people, sometimes I'll do these workshops around finding purpose, clarifying your intention, becoming really meant to be in the world. And I get people who don't know what that is and they're trying to find out. And the first thing we start with is, let's look at your story. Like, what is your story? What are your life experiences telling you about you? What experiences have you overcome? Have you healed from that you now have the ability to help other people overcome and help other people heal? Because in many instances, your story is telling you what you're here to do. It's telling you what you're here to heal, what you're here to, create, and what you're here to give the world just by looking at your own journey. And that journey doesn't always mean that you are here to solve for a pain. Not everyone has gone through the hard experiences that you and I went through, not simply just, beyond not having our fathers in the home, but the environments we grew in and up in and the things we had to overcome and defend ourselves in. Everyone doesn't come from, you don't need a trauma story to find your purpose.
Absolutely.
Because for many people, home life was good. They had a good relationship with their mom and with their dad. Well, now you are evidence of what a healthy environment looks like. So you are able to, through your lived experience, show other people what healthy looks like.
Yeah.
It doesn't be just showing them, hey, I come from pain and I come from trauma, I understand. It can also be, hey, there's a better way of showing up in the world. There are healthier values to have that will allow you, live in a healthy home context. And so for some of you listening, look at your story and see what your story has been trying to tell you about what you're here to do in the world that you might have been ignoring. Because there are some gems in your journey that will give you guidance on the next phase of your life in terms of what you might accomplish, what you might create, and who you might help overcome. So I just wanted to throw that out there as well. Now, Rob, I mentioned when we were promoting this, that you are in the book, I Wish My Dad. But before we get to that, we've talked about you being a cybersecurity expert. We talked about, your service in the military and being a minister. You're also a father of two amazing young. Uh, and love to hear how being a dad has shaped how you show up in the world. Like, what is it? What have you learned from being a dad?
Wow. So everything that I learned about being a father, the majority of it, I should say, it really came from watching my father. He just didn't show up. He wasn't there, and it was a negative experience. And I remember as a teenager saying, if I ever have children, I'm going to be completely opposite. So I would just show up. I grew up playing just about every sport. So I believed that I wanted to have sons. I got two daughters, and I just had to show up. And girls are really pretty simple, man. And you just kind of show up and listen. And, I've got a 16-year-old and 28-year-old who are young ladies, and I can't, mold them or change them. I could just expose them to different people. And it's absolutely a joy watching them. And still, there's a humility part because, even at this stage, every day with my daughters is new. As they experience different challenges in their life or just life in general, I have a tendency to revert back to how I was raised. Kind of those old stern ways. I think, Ramal, you and I had a conversation. Like, you can't raise your son to navigate the streets because that's not where he's living. And so I had to learn to really just kind of listen. And it's completely different than the way that we were raised, man. I didn't get time out. Miss Lee had a belt, bro, and an extension cord. That was it. There was no. But that's not a loving or godly way to raise and prepare our children. And so, breaking that cycle, and if a lot of people look at it and honest, the way a lot of us was raised is it was abusive. It didn't give you the opportunity to think and experience life. And so, yeah, my daughters, man, they mean the world to me. I sit back sometimes and just cry, just thinking of all of the things and how free that their minds are and how they express themselves. It's absolutely amazing to me.
Yeah, I think about that often in terms of, how I was attempting to raise my son, the things I was trying to teach him.
Yeah.
And realized that I was trying to equip him with the same skills that my uncles were trying to equip me with.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that one of the big lesson was my uncles and my grandfather and the men in my life were trying to equip me with what they had and what they needed because they functioned under the assumption that my life was going to be like their lives. And if then I was going to need the same skills that they needed.
Yeah.
I realized that that's all I had at the time to give my son, and it was useless to him.
Absolutely.
So I think it forced me, and I think for some of us, we have to look at what schools raise our sons and daughters, and question if we are handing down skills to our children that they no longer need and that will not serve them well.
Yeah.
They need to know, how to be tough in the streets and, how to, be situations in the hood. And he wasn't growing up in the hood, and he did not need that level of aggression and approach to life. And I found that my uncles actually handed skills down to me that I did not need and were not going to serve me well in the world. And as a result of being unaware, I was doing the same thing.
Yeah.
That I am trying to equip this with skills that he does not need.
Correct. Yeah.
And I think that sometimes, it becomes an opportunity to say, is it possible that God could give me a vision for my child that's bigger than my pain points and better than what I went through? And the answer, of course, is yes. And since that is the case, then it becomes an issue of looking to identify what are the skills I learn in order to equip my son or my daughter with what they need for who they are becoming in the world. That has nothing to do with who I am in the world, but it's a journey and their purpose, and identifying how I can be a part of pouring into that in healthy ways, and breaking the cycle in ourselves of, you know, behaviors and ways of showing up and ways of that actually aren't
Yeah,
beneficial. But we do them because that's what was done to us. We,
absolutely.
our children, the way people talk to us, and we'll say, well, it made me stronger. But did it really? Like,
Yeah,
or did it do harm as well? Was it something that gave you a lower sense of self-worth, or, you know, instill some form of sustained anger in you and distrust in you? And if that is the case, then maybe it's time to find some new skill sets, to
yeah,
learn how to show ways that are, so that they can, you know, as I tell people, uh, create in your home space, safe emotional space where
yeah,
your kids are not afraid to talk about their feelings. And that's something I had to learn to do, and I'm now doing with my son. We hung out recently and had Havana, but I'm learning to show up in ways that are affirming and listen to him without judging him through the lens of my story and being triggered by, oh, that's soft, or oh, that's
yeah,
weak, and realizing, no, he's neither soft nor weak nor any of those labels that were given to me growing up. He's fully human. He
yeah,
he is a healthy, and he's a
yeah,
fully present, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
yeah,
Um, and so sometimes when I listen to him, I now find myself learning from him, and I'm
absolutely.
still there's still work I need to do to be the kind of emotionally present person that he is.
Yeah. You know, I like that term, and I've heard that you use that a lot about being emotionally present or emotionally available. And, you know, I often think about, you know, look at our lineage. I mean, I'm 4 generations removed from sharecropping or slavery. And like mentioned to you, my mother was an amazing woman, but she used an extension cord. Might as well use the whip. And a lot of us grew up where we were whipped. That's what slaves are done. That's how slaves are disciplined. So you change your behavior. And so if we're still passing on that same type of discipline as opposed to freeing and knowledge to our children, and it takes work to break those chains, to break that cycle. You know, those are biblical generational curses, and it's so easy to pass on anger because you were treated one way and you don't understand. You don't have the skills, you don't have the resources. Black folks don't want to go to therapy, folks don't want to go to therapy to really do the difficult work where that counselor or that life coach looks at you and says, you know, what about that behavior? Or why do you act like that? Why do you respond? And what are you going to do about it? Because you're impacting your children. Like I said, I had 2 beautiful girls, man. And my oldest daughter, Jazz, she used to cry crocodile tears, like very slow. Like you can count her tears when something was wrong with her. She wasn't a big baller or anything like that, but the slow tears. And it reminded me of, you know, the pain, the longevity of the suffering that black folks have gone through. And I said, you know what, I got to do my best to end that. And it's ongoing. I'm always talking. I completely changed my circle. I changed the way I show up with my friends. I don't mind being the one who leads the conversation about being transparent. Hey man, I'm having some problems. I had a rough day. I don't understand this. You know, what have you done in your life, my brother? You know, Joe knows that, you know, we play golf every Friday, man, and we halfway play golf, and we halfway it's a therapy session, you know. But I need that in my life. I need people around me who are not ashamed of the truth, the fact that they have flaws and the fact that they are hurt. But we have a responsibility to change the story for our children.
Yeah, you know, that's an important point. As you were talking about it, I was thinking about a conversation I had at an event when I was in Nairobi, and someone raised the question. She made the statement first. She said, you know, therapy. She said, you talk about therapy a lot, but for many of us, who come from, you know, environments where we just don't have the resources to see a therapist. Therapy is actually a tool for the privileged, because it suggests that you have enough extra money to pay somebody for the help that you need.
Mm-hmm.
So what about, and she says, so what about those in the room who just simply do not have the resources to pay to see a professional? What else can they do? And she made a suggestion, and we started talking about what you're saying, your friend circle, and creating spaces where you can have a conversation, where you can be transparent and honest judgment. Friends will hold you with open hands and not try to judge you or change you in a moment of difficulty. And I say difficulty and not weak.
Yeah.
And be sad, and that's not weakness. It's a moment of sadness and, you know, even sometimes fear or anger. But are there people, can we create spaces in our lives where the people we are connected to are able to be fully present in ways that are healthy, to just even sometimes sit in silence with you when you're going through a hard time? You know,
Absolutely.
we always need for people to say something. It's just knowing that someone's there, or to show up and be an encouraging, you know, voice when there's a difficult time. But, you know, yeah, so having a friend circle that is healthy, that's not just performance driven, that isn't only about having fun together and talking about entertaining things, but being in relationship with people who are there simply because of who you are and not the performance, not the entertainment, but genuinely be in your life, know what's happening in your life so that they can support you in it. I think is critical. Does it replace having access to a professional? It does not, but in the absence of being able to afford access, you know, a therapist, a big thing that we can do for ourselves is make sure we are in healthy relationships, uh, that and with people we can trust, and not just with what we have to say, but with our hearts, so that they can be there to care for us, I think is essential.
There's value in those relationships. You know, I want to share something with you, Mark, real quick. You know, when you were talking about what I learned in the military, does this look familiar to you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep. I think the
You,
A5, me, all of the guys have one now. You gifted us one a few years back.
absolutely, absolutely. So, you know, this is one of the things that I learned from from the military, and I treasure this. You know, one of the best compliments that another soldier can give to one is, "I will go to war with you," or "I'll stay in a foxhole with you." During the most difficult and challenging times, you gotta have people who don't mind carrying you. You know, and that's one of the things that I learned from the military. And there's no persona that a soldier or a man has to pretend. You either are able to do the job, or for some reason, for this particular season, you are not able to do what is expected. And at that point, you need someone that you could trust, not someone that when you down, they're going to go tell the boys and they're going to make a joke out of it, but someone when you're intimate, when you're hurting, when you're down and you just can't move forward. You need to be able to have somebody that you can pick up the phone and be honest. We hide too much of who we really, really are.
You, you know, when you when you were talking about that, I I remember night fire in the Army, and great metaphor, because
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
I remember we marched out there in the desert when it's dark, and basically, bottom line is you get to this point where they're firing at you, stuff's blowing, crawling under barbed wire, and
yeah,
before it started, there were a group of guys who were talking real tough about
yeah,
what they were going to do and how they were going to be the first ones through.
yep,
Man, when the air went up in the air and the guns started going off, they panicked.
yep,
And we, some of us who we stay focused. And the thing is, you find out who people are in live fire when life is,
Absolutely.
when it's noisy around you, when there are distractions, when the skills that you've been given to overcome are now tested.
Absolutely.
Find out who the people are alongside you. Because now it's time to see if what they said is actually who they really are.
Absolutely.
And until you're under fire.
Yeah.
And life is hard and you're distracted and you get anxious. Either going to have people with you who are going to dial in and stay focused and not just get themselves to the other side, but sure that you get to the other side. Because even when those guys panicked, we still had to get them through,
Absolutely.
right? We didn't have the privilege of leaving them behind.
Right.
But we got to survive this. And oh, well, for them, since they panicked, you don't get to do that.
That's right.
You have to make sure that every soldier makes it to the other side.
Yeah.
Even if it slows you down a little bit. It's, the goal was for everyone to get to the other side.
Absolutely. That's the mission.
Competing against each other.
Yeah.
We were soldiering together. And so, I really appreciate you for that, reminding me of that, because in our friendships, that's how we show up. That's how you and I, Paul and Joe and Rudy, and Van, that's how we show up for each other.
Yeah, man.
It's through the difficulties, through the night fire of life, when there are challenges that your friends step up, and they don't leave you there by yourself. Even if it slows down their journey a little bit, they're going to make sure that you get to the other side too.
Absolutely.
And know that we have people like that in our lives, and have the conversation.
Yeah.
Right.
I think people owe it to themselves. They owe it to their families. You talk about our friendship and how often we brag about the Fab Five, and then we all have extensions of, relationships. But, think about it. Everyone they have the right to have a circle of friends that they can brag on. My friends, when I was sick with COVID, my friends showed up every day. They spread out across the country and they bought food for my family. And my friends that were here in DC, Karen was blown away because people were ringing the door. I had COVID, so they were just throwing food at the door with nobody trying to come in. But, that's just how it was. People were showing up. And everyone should be able to look around and say, do I have friends like that, or am I that friend? And if you don't have friends like that and you're comfortable with who you are as a person, I challenge you to be transparent, to be that type of person who calls their friends, who looks out for their friends. And before you know it, you will have that circle. You'll have that village that will maintain and sustain you through the toughest of times. And there's nothing like it. There's absolutely nothing like it.
One of the most refreshing things in life is when life is difficult, you just, no matter how hard it gets, you're not alone, because you know who your friends are. Those. It's one of the things that I cherish about my friendships and the Fave Five. Rob, Paul, Rudy, Vance, Joe. We just move like that, and so no matter what life way, I know I'm not alone. And I really want that for everybody, because I do know what it's like to feel like you are alone in the world.
Absolutely.
And it's a darkness that I don't want for anyone. I just want people to build and have courageous relationships that are honest and loyal, to the point where people will show up for you even if it inconveniences them. Because, that's what love looks like.
Absolutely.
You can't have healthy friendships without love, right? Because
absolutely,
it's the glue that allows people to say, what, I have to put myself aside, and I'm willing to do that to make sure that you're okay. And that because you are a priority, right? And that's important. So we have a few minutes left. We got about 10 more minutes. when in the past, Rob, when we have talked about I Wish My Dad and your chapter, I prior to my sabbatical in Kenya opened my eyes to so many new things and approaches to seeing stories. And I had conversations there where they would talk about their fathers, and they would talk about the challenges of a hard man and his difficulties, and in the same sentence pivot to, but he's a great man, and talk about the things that are and were so good about their father. In other words, they didn't hold him uh, in opposition. Like, he was a full person. Like, he was fully human, where he had his difficulties and his challenges. Some of them were really tough, but there are some really good things about him. And what I realized was, not only were people able to see the wholeness of the man, even in his brokenness, they were able to see the gifts. But it's also because for some people I talked to, they realize that a part of who they are comes from who their dad is, or who.
Absolutely.
And in order to see their own humanity, they have to see it in their father, because if a part of who I am comes from who he is, then I'm forced to not only hold him accountable for the bad, but also for the good, because the good is in me, and anything bad that he did only reminds me that I have the ability to do harm. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that I will be like him in those difficult ways, but I cannot embrace the good that I inherited from him without being aware of the bad. And I can't simply just say he was all things bad, because I know that I'm not all things bad.
Yeah.
And I realized that
Mm.
I spend a lot of time talking about what I had to overcome because of my dad and his challenges, but I haven't informed my son and my daughter about the good that my dad is, the strength that he has, the discipline that he had. You know, my dad was a Marine,
Yeah.
served tours in Vietnam. But he's a very disciplined man, very strong life, very loyal person. And I haven't been sharing with children, and I've decided that I want to do more of that, because I see in my son and in my daughter not just the gifts that come from who I am, but those also come from who my father was. And they don't know that some of my son's confidence and discipline is legacy.
Yeah.
And I think we should be telling more of those stories. Now, I said all of asked questions. When you think about your journey with your father, and we know that there were some really difficult things. For those of you watching, check out Rob's story in I Wish My Dad. But I also know in that story, there are some things about you that you definitely got from him, and you didn't even know it at the time.
Yeah.
So as you think about that, what are some gifts? Because we could, rather than us talking about the difficulties, I think people can see
Yeah.
those when they read the chapter. But what are some of the gifts that he gave you? And then I want to pivot to another question and wrap back to your
Yeah.
daughters.
You know, this is the deal for me, right? I carried the burden of an unsuccessful, an unloving relationship with my father for 40 plus years, right? I carried that burden. I had all kinds of insecurities because of that. So, what can I do with that? Continue to blame him and continue to fester for who I had become as a person. When I decided that it was time to heal, and the only way that I could be healed was through the love of Christ. That was it. I had to stop looking for my father, the individual, to heal me and release me. So once I looked at him, knowing that, and Christ gave me the eyes. My love, my faith gave me the eyes to say, you know what? He really did the best that he could for the time. Once I got to that point, it was amazing. God started sending family members and other people that I trusted who gave me the opportunity to see my father. When I would go to Oklahoma, people like, man, you look just like Uncle Robert. I was like, man, at first I didn't want to hear that. But then, and I heard story after story. One of my cousins, Henry, who I'm very close with, um, he and I are 2 years apart. And I had seen Henry for about 20 years. And I had Jasmine, my oldest daughter, was with me. And she was like, Dad, who's that guy over there? Because he looks like you. And Henry later told me that Henry is one of 11 and that my father would single him out, take him to get food when he was in school, take him hunting and fishing and just spend time with him. And at first, Henry told me that I resented him. But then Henry came to realize, he said, wow, Uncle Robert was doing that because you were not here. And at that moment, it just, everything released. And I forgave my father and I was healed myself. So you got to be open. If there is an issue, if there is a burden that you've been carrying for a long time, you have to trust God um, to free you. And it's really interesting how God will use different people. That's what God does. So you can't go into this thing very methodical and with your checklist saying, okay, dad needs to do this and my father needs to do this. You got to lend hand to the gumption, if you will, of the Holy Spirit to do those things that are miraculous that we don't think about. That's the only way you could experience that type of healing. So that conversation that you're going to have, it's going to flow easy, Ramal, because that is the steps to healing. It's the steps to passing that on, that love, the different characteristics and qualities that your father had, to pass those on to your children. It's going to be an easy conversation
Yeah.
because I
So
do it.
when you think about your daughters, what would you want them to know about your dad?
He did the very best that he could. And I want them to understand the time, the generation that my father was born in 1927 in Oklahoma, which was Indian territory. You got to go back and look at the environment that our family came from and to try to read up on it and understand what it was like for people at that time. In particular, my father had an eighth grade education. He had to quit school to take care of the rest of his 11 siblings.
Mm.
I mean, how loving can you be? I mean, you really have to dig. You can't hold someone accountable for how you are because they didn't have the skills or the environment to support it. So we have to be loved.
Mm.
You you have to. You cannot take someone that's, in their 80s and put them into the expectation of modern times. It's just not going to work. It's not going to work. You got to do the extra work. You got to go into it wanting to forgive. And my father was a hard-working man. He was a country boy. He liked to hunt. He liked to fish. He was a deacon emeritus at his church. So there were some things I had to stop looking for the bad. He's a part of my Christian faith.
Yeah, thank you for that, Rob.
Absolutely.
You've given us some gems tonight on a number of levels and through several topics. Uh, we're just about out of time, and so I just want to close with just some of the reflections on some takeaways from tonight. Starting with your profession as someone who is in cybersecurity, for people to be aware of their activity online. When you're traveling, don't always put it out there where you are and the fact that you're not home. Be conscious enough to protect your data and protect your space. When you're looking at your accounts every month, as was said by Rob, look for those small things because cyber attacks are subtle. They're not always big when it comes to individuals out here in the world. They're small things, where people have accessed your data and are manipulating it. So be intentional about how you check your accounts and read everything on your monthly statements, and how you use social media. Know that hackers are always trying to get your data and then use it against you. Be mindful of things that we sometimes take for granted because we so easily just open these apps and start using them. One of the other things, Rob, helped us see tonight is that serving and corporate arena as a professional and being a minister are not in opposition, that you can live a fully integrated life, love God, love Jesus, serve the church, and do well and do good as a business professional. All of these allow you to be all of who God created you to be. Rob we shared some reflections on our military, and I had not given a lot of thought beyond the discipline that the military gave me and obviously gave you. But a lesson I think for everyone is that we learn through the military is you find out who your friends are through the difficult times, but you cultivate those relationships before life is hard, getting to know each other, having long conversations. Because in the military, there are times when you and your buddy is all you have. That's the only person you talk to, and you learn about each other's families, and you learn about their upbringing, and you know who you're soldiering with by the time of battle. You know not just what this person is capable of with their skill sets, but their life. And so you are willing to make sacrifices for them because you know this person. You've spent time.
Absolutely.
So the takeaway there is create a circle where you really get to know each other on a deep level and begin to find out who you are when, as we said, during night fire, during battle, you're battling, that you don't get to leave people behind if they fall short. They have to sacrifice and slow down to make sure that everyone else makes it. Those are skills that apply in life, that all of us want to be in relationship with people who are willing to slow down, get up, so that we can make it too. To go through carrying us through a difficult time, because they love us, they know us, and they know that we would do the same for them. All of us deserve that. And thank you, Rob, for taking you back down that military memory lane.
That's what we do.
I'm going to do some more reflecting on that, but that was certainly a gift to me, and I hope it was helpful to others. We are, man, it's already been an hour. Thank you for the gift of your time, your stories, and your journey. I love you, man.
Yeah, I love you, bro. And thank you for helping me go deeper into who I am. It's made me a better person. It's made me a better friend, better father. So I'm grateful for you, my brother.
All right. Until next time, I'll see you.
Right.
Peace, everybody.
All right. Good night.